So Fabio Wardley stops Justin Huni in the 10th round. Right, what a punch, what a right hand from Fabio Wardley. And that's heavyweight boxing. You know, one punch can change everything. You know, it was a good fight. Huni was definitely winning the fight. And if we're being really honest, he was giving Fabio Wardley a bit of a beating as the rounds went on. You know, Fabio, he started off pretty well. He hurt Huni at the end of round 1. He was looking decent. But then Huni, he just started to go through the gears. You know, as the commentary pointed out, Huni has a good amateur career, or had a good amateur career, whereas Fabio Wardley, he started in boxing late. His skills aren't as well-rounded as Justice Huni. Huni was really, he was going through the gears. As the fight went on, he was becoming more and more dominant. Wardley was really struggling in there. He was struggling to find the target. Huni was just, you know, he had the skill set to take away Fabio's right hand, his power punching, and he was catching Fabio to the body, to the head as well. Wardley was really struggling in there. As the fight wore on, it became more and more a beating. You know, Huni was really giving him a beating as the fight went on. Come round 10, Wardley, I mean, he just lands a peach of a right hand, you know, a perfect right hand to bail him out. You know, I think the best thing about all this was Eddie Hearn's reaction. You know, the shock on his face when he saw his man Huni go down. You know, he can't buy a win against Frank Warren. Every time we got an Eddie Hearn fighter against a Frank Warren fighter, Warren's guys just turn up, you know. Dubois against Joshua. Who else? You know, the 5v5, the 5-zip that Frank Warren gave to Eddie Hearn. You know, every single time a Frank Warren fighter comes up against the Eddie Hearn fighter, Frank Warren's guy comes out on top. And it was looking like it wasn't going to be that way in this one. Huni, Eddie Hearn's man, he was winning the fight, clearly winning the fight. As the fight wore on, he just became more and more dominant. It looked like it was going to be a dominant win. It even got to the point where I was thinking, you know, is Fabio Wardley going to sit down in the corner here and his corner tell him, you've had enough. You know, you're taking a beating in there. You've got one more round, or we're pulling you out. It was becoming that sort of fight for Wardley. But yeah, to his credit, he pulled it off. You know, big right hand, game over. That's heavyweight boxing. So I want to mention the referee count as well. I always like to bring the ref's count up where I see it's if I see there's a problem, or if I see it as corruption. I think this was a corrupt call. You know, I mean, Huni, if you watch the count, Huni goes down, the referee counts to 9, then Huni is on his feet 9.2, 9.4 seconds, whatever. Just after 9, Huni is on his feet and the ref waves the fight off. To me, that's corruption. You know, he wanted to wave the fight off. You know, clearly Fabio Wardley was the hometown guy, the favourite, was expected to win, and the referee knew, you know, if you get a chance to wave off the fight, wave it off. because yeah, Huni definitely got to his feet just after 9 seconds, and the ref waved it off. You know, I mean, he got up a similar time to Fury getting up against Wilder in their first fight. You know, imagine if the ref just waved Fury off. He probably wouldn't have got the Wilder rematch. He probably wouldn't have gone on to become WBC champion. You know, his whole career could have been different. You know, no undisputed fight with Usyk. So sometimes you got to give a fighter a chance, you know, especially if they beat the count. In my opinion, if you beat the count, you beat the count. The referee should look at your eyes, talk to you, ask you if you're all right. You know, if you beat that 10-second count, you at least deserve that chance. So yeah, a bit of a corrupt call there on the count. And now Huni, he faces a big problem. You know, being on the losing end of this fight, it's going to be very, very difficult to get him a fight with anyone with a name, really. Because he showed he's at a good level, you know, he's at a top level sort of thing. But he lost, so his name doesn't grow in stature, really. You know, if he had won this fight, his name would have more pull, right? He could have asked for another big name after Wardley, or the Wardley rematch. But is Wardley gonna want to rematch Huni? Absolutely not. Is his team gonna want that fight? Absolutely not. Any guy with a name now is gonna avoid Justice Huni because they can, because his name, he took a loss, right? So there's no reason to fight him. He's a guy that's just lost, doesn't really have a name, but is a very good heavyweight. You know, it's a high risk, no reward sort of fight for anyone with a name in the heavyweight division. So he faces a bit of a problem there. On the other side, Wardley, again, he's not going to rematch Huni. I'd be very surprised if he does. So what's next for Wardley? Well, he's got to get back to the gym, first of all, work on his skills, because he was really getting dominated here. He's got to step it up, you know, in his preparation for fighting top guys. I mean, Huni is very good, but I don't think he's as good as Kabayel. He's definitely not as good as Usyk, Dubois, you know, Fury. But yeah, Wardley, you know, great highlight knockout. For me, the big fight to make is Wardley against Joshua. You know, if Fury isn't going to come out of retirement and fight Joshua, you know, why not make Wardley Joshua? I mean, again, it's two English fighters. Both guys can punch. Wardley's on the come up, you know, on the brink of breaking into the top 5, top 6 heavyweights. You know, he's just on the brink right now. Joshua coming off a loss, you know, but another big domestic clash. You know, the fight against Dubois was a big one, sellout, you know, big event. This would be another big one. So yeah, for me, Wardley's team should, you know, they should look at Joshua now. They should want that scalp as well. You know, imagine if Wardley goes in there and stops Joshua, then his name just gets catapulted. He becomes a big star in the UK. So that's the fight that I would be going for if I was Wardley or his team. Joshua on the decline, you know, ripe for the picking. You know, that's the fight. That's what I want to see next. All right, let me know what you think.